My name is SOBOVITZ. I'm head of government relations and Israeli partnerships in OurCrowd, and I'm very, very excited to be here today, not only because of the panel, but because my wife is supposed to give birth very soon and she's sitting here. So we might have some, yeah, I might leave in the middle and someone will replace me. Oh, you do? It's impact here, so it's good. Okay, so let's start with some. You do?
We know so much now, yeah.
Okay, so.
Feel better?
Ask her, don't ask me. Anyway, let's start with some questions to the crowd. Who knows what is the percentage of Israeli Arabs out of the total population in Israel? Any guess? Very nice. You prepared before you came here, huh? Okay, now a harder question. Who knows what is the percentage of Israeli Arabs employees out of the total high-tech industry in Israel?
1.5.
So actually, it's mixed. Small startup companies actually, according to the 2018 Human Resource Survey published by the Israel Innovation Authority and Startup Nation Central, actually 2/3 of small startups in Israel don't employ even one Arab employee. Bigger companies employ about 3%. Hi, Dad. Always, I'm late, now he's late. 3% of their employees are Arabs. Now, this is ridiculous. Why is that ridiculous? Because if you think about it, and you read in the same report, last year, 2018, there were 15,000 open positions in the high-tech. So how can it be? There's lack of engineers, lack of entrepreneurs, and only so few Arabs in the high-tech. So in this panel, we'll try to ask these questions with the amazing panelists we hear and try even to suggest some solutions. By the way, the numbers in entrepreneurs, not only in the high-tech engineers, but entrepreneurs is quite the same. So let me introduce you our amazing panelist.
She's an amazing guy.
So, I'm very honored to introduce AMANI Abutir. AMANI is a passionate entrepreneur from Jerusalem. She's a founder of WAZZA, a bespoke management and communication platform for the preschool in the Middle East and North Africa region. Please sit. AMANI won several competitions, including Iconic Woman Creating a Better World for All in 2019, featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 list 2019, and the golden winner in Mass Challenge Accelerator. Thank you for coming.
Money also contributes a lot of her revenue to other women to allow them to go to university. Wow.
Amazing.
Just mentioning.
NAOMI KRIEGER is head of the Societal Challenge Division at the Israeli Innovation Authority. Among her many missions is developing human capital for the knowledge-based industry and to address Israel's shortage of skilled tech workers. Within these efforts, there is a particular focus on realizing the potential of women and minority groups that are underrepresented in the tech industry. Thank you, Naomi, for coming. ITZIK FRID is a managing partner of Takwin Labs, a venture capital fund and incubator making early-stage investments in high-tech companies run by Arab entrepreneurs in Israel. Takwin nurtures a startup spirit in the Arab-Israeli communities and empower Arab entrepreneurs to build successful companies. Thank you, ITZIK. YADIN KAUFMANN has been working since 2008 to help create a Palestinian startup ecosystem. He co-founded Sadara Ventures, the first fund targeting investment in Palestinian technology companies, and also founded in 2014 the Palestinian Internship Program. Thank you, YADIN, for coming. And our last panelist, Gideon Bebar, is an activist in high-tech scene, especially in the Arab and Druze communities. He is a member of the Public Council for Integrating Arab Engineer in the high-tech. These days, he's working on establishing the Innovation Hub in Beit Jan, a Druze village in the Galilee. Please join us.
The projectors in our eyes are a must.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start with you, Gideon. Can you please describe to the audience what are the biggest challenges to an Arab entrepreneur or engineer in Israel today? Maybe.
Yeah. Hi everyone. Thanks for coming. So one of the biggest challenges for the Arab entrepreneurs is the difference in culture between the high-tech scene in Tel Aviv and the center, and the Arab culture of the north mainly. There is a natural barrier psychologically between Jewish high-tech entrepreneurs and the Arabs. There is some fear that we see between them, and it's a result from our complicated geopolitical reality here in Israel. Other challenge is although we are seeing a lot of good people and that have goodwill to help, but we don't see any VC investments. We have Takwin. It's a small fund relatively to the other VCs in the center. We have the innovation authority that it's doing really a good job, but it's not enough. It's a drop of water in the sea. And we hope that in the coming years, maybe 5 to 7 years, if we see one exit or two exits for Arab startups, so a lot of VCs will join and really invest money. And just to give an example, last year, 2018, we saw $6.5 billion raised for high-tech companies, startups, and more mature companies in Israel. From this amount, Arab startups got only about $10 million, and it wasn't from Israeli VCs. It was from outside money. So we need to make more connections and more networking with the VCs, with the Arab entrepreneurs.
Thank you. So AMANI is also here, and you're a very successful entrepreneur. I tried to follow all the winnings and records you got. Very impressive. So what made you difference? And by the way, how many Arab entrepreneurs do you know in your society, in your community?
In Jerusalem, women entrepreneurs.
Women and men.
It's like a diamond rare thing. It's you can't find it. Yeah. So between like 6,000 startups, like Israeli startups, you can find between 60 to 90 people who are an Arab leading startups, which are around 1.4%. This is the number, like in the whole country, the number of entrepreneurs. And if you come to Jerusalem, the number is much, much like lower. So you ask about the challenges, and allow me to share that with you.
Sure.
So personally, the challenges were not from like deciding to be an entrepreneur. It's actually started with me when I graduated high school and I wanted to become an engineer. And it was something really hard, really difficult. None of the people understand it, and it's not possible. But for me, I was consistent to become an engineer, and 5 years later, I became the engineer with a patent in my hand and winning multiple competitions and make like my family proud of me. Even they at the beginning they think that was really hard for me to become an engineer. And after that, I found the perfect job that any man can dream of, a steady like income, stable life. And then I decided to quit everything, move to another city, and get my MBA and graduate as one of the best students in my class and establish my own company. And by the way, I'm married to an amazing husband. He's a vascular surgeon in Shah Sadiq Hospital, and he got me pregnant while I'm starting to invest to get money to establish my company, which is the hardest thing to do. And I was like pregnant, raise money for my company, and by the way, I achieved it. And after that, I was having a baby, forming a team, talking to more, do market validation, build a product in really short time. And then when I achieved that, and I got more people who demand for my solution, now I want to scale my team and get more fund. So these are all the challenges that I faced during my journey, and many to come, I'm sure.
So it's amazing, but if you did it, why not anybody else in your community?
I don't. I receive no's like so many times per day. like I guarantee you I receive no's like every single day, at least 2 or 3 times, but I keep pushing. Like I feel that I'm a role model. Like I want to have a better future for my kids, and I can't do that while I'm sitting in front of the computer in a small like office working to achieve other people's dreams.
Can I jump in with one comment?
Sure.
We already touched the subject of women entrepreneurs. If you check the Israeli market in general, both the Jewish and the Arab, there are hardly any women entrepreneurs. I've seen hundreds of entrepreneurships among Israeli Arabs, and I saw, I think, from 800 or 900 companies we've seen, about 3 or 4 of them were women. So women are a problem. And by the way, going back to the stats...
Women are not a problem. The problem is that they cannot come
The
in.
problem is, they are... Well, the society... it's not the topic of this panel, so we won't get into it, but just to talk about numbers. If you check the Technion today, you talked about numbers in your preamble. Number of students in the Technion today, 20% of the Technion, which is the best institution, are women. And 60% out of the Arab 20% are Arabs, which reflects their proportion in society today. And they're going to the best faculties. Computer science, 10 years ago, you did not have many Arabs or hardly any Arabs in computer science in Israel, and specifically in the Technion. And 60% of those 20% in the Technion are women. So first of all, we're here to talk about future and what can be done. So if we look about vectors and where this market is headed, then you see a lot of women, Arabic, technical citizens that are going to the right faculties today.
So you're very optimistic. I thought you finished the panel in optimistic lines, and you took it right from the beginning. So we tried now to think again, what can we do, because things are not perfect there. But if you jumped in, so just explain me, you're Jewish, and you're managing a fund that invests only in Arabs. So can you please explain what is the story here?
Yeah, I think Churchill said that an anti-Semist person is somebody who hates Jews more than necessary. Okay. But I'm not anti-Semistic. I'm doing it from the most Zionist and Israeli-loving approach. We have an amazing part of our society which we're not really connected to. Going back to the challenges of Arabs, I think that the main challenge of Arabic entrepreneurs is that they simply live in the peripheries. This is the main challenge. Every periphery in every country does not really participate in high-tech all across the globe, but as opposed to Israel in other countries, the population is mixed. A Jewish guy that grew up in the Galilee, if you graduate the Technion, you'll find a job either in Haifa or in Tel Aviv suburbs. While an Arab guy from the Galilee will most probably go back to live in his village, and there it's very hard both to find a job in high-tech and definitely to be an entrepreneur there. It's nearly impossible. Now, going back to me personally, I think that 5 or 10 years from now, we will have Arab high-tech leaders, and we're growing them as we speak in Takwin and other places in Israel, that will be able to lead a fund like Takwin and other funds. And maybe 5, 10 years from now, there will not be a need for a dedicated fund for Arabic entrepreneurs. Today, due to the challenges and the differences, there's still a major need for a different, slightly different approach to grow those companies. But hopefully 10 years from now, it will not be needed.
Okay, YADIN, ITZIK is investing in Israeli Arab companies. You're investing in Palestinian companies. So can you please tell us about your experience going to Ramallah, right?
Right.
Meeting Palestinian entrepreneurs. How does it feel? How is it different from Israel?
Well, it's obviously very different from Israel. So our fund, Sadara Ventures, and by the way, I do have an Israeli Arab partner, a guy named Said Nashif, with whom I started the fund. So this is a for-profit fund, and the idea is to try to help create a little bit of the startup nation next door, for a lot of reasons that I think are also for the benefit of Israel, as I can explain later. So, you know, this wasn't the most natural thing. I'd been investing in Israeli high-tech companies for many years and decided that this is what I wanted to try to do. Initially, you know, it seemed like a crazy thing, for one reason because it was in Ramallah, which is where all the tech action is there. And secondly, because there were no startups. I mean, literally 0 startups at the time we started. So when I first went there, you know, it felt very different from anything I'd seen before. Maybe, you know, how Israel was many, many years ago. But today, and so the first time I went, sure, I was a little bit, you know, I suppose there was some skepticism or, you know, concern on my part, first time going there, as I'm sure there was on the part of the Palestinians with whom I was meeting. But, you know, that dissipated very quickly. I mean, I'd say within about half an hour. And ever since then, and I go there, I don't know, about once a month, with permission from the army, of course, which I need as an Israeli, but they're very, very supportive of this. And it feels very natural. And, you know, I've met some fantastic people, some terrific entrepreneurs there. And today I will say that, you know, this is now 11 or 12 years since I started working on this. You know, the environment there is much different. And, you know, it's still not Herzliya Pituach. It's maybe not even Jerusalem. And there's certainly no events like we're seeing here today. But, you know, if you compare it to what it was 8 or 10 years ago, there are startups. There are about 30 startups now that have received some kind of funding. There are 4 funds of one kind or another there. There are entrepreneurs. There are startup weekends. There is a kind of buzz around the idea of tech startups. And they want to be part of the, you know, tech revolution too. So, you know, I feel, like I said, I feel very safe and very good going there, and I feel that that it's extremely important that we help encourage this this ecosystem over there for everyone's benefit.
Yeah. So NAOMI, you're the governmental official here that in charge of making this place not only the startup nation, but the startup nation for everyone. So can you speak about what you do in your division in order to bring in the ecosystem, not only women, as mentioned before, but also Arab entrepreneurs?
Sure. So really briefly, for those who aren't familiar, the Israel Innovation Authority is basically a new authority set up on the basis of what was the Office of the Chief Scientist about 2 years ago. So we're the government agency that's responsible for developing research and development and technological innovation as an engine for economic growth. The main thing that we do is give funding to industry in places that there's a market failure. We give out about 1.6 billion shekels a year, all the way from early stage entrepreneurs to large companies doing high risk projects. And we try to come in and then invite the private sector to follow, and the Office of the Chief Scientist is credited with, you know, having played a big role in the development of Israel's startup ecosystem. When we look at the challenges that we face today, one of the major challenges is, are we really realizing the full potential that we have as an innovation nation? And are we, first of all, do we have enough people to meet the needing demands of the high-tech industry? But then also, are we really making sure that we're getting the most out of the innovative capacity? And the answer is clearly not, when you see that 65% of the high-tech industry are Jewish, non-Haredi men, non-ultra-Orthodox men in the center of the country. So we're obviously missing out on huge parts of the talent population. And we're missing out both as entrepreneurs and innovators, and just as the workforce, as per the numbers that you gave earlier. So the Office of the Chief Scientist started a pilot project about 5 years ago, even before there was a Societal Challenges division, looking at, you know, what can we do to start to change the picture in entrepreneurship, and very quickly realized that there's great innovative potential among the Arab community, but the doors are often shut for them. They don't know investors, they don't have the right networks, the investors don't either. Some of them may be biased, some of them may not be biased, but they just don't know how to read them. They don't know the schools they went to, they don't know the backgrounds, and they just weren't able to get the money to get started. So the Office of the Chief Scientist said, if our basic package to a startup that passes our evaluation is to fund 50% of their project, we're going to give them 85%. And that was absolutely transformative in, first of all, getting the Arab entrepreneurs to come and apply, but then also getting funding and managing to get their projects off the ground. When my division was set up, we took a deep look at that program and implemented a lot of changes to it. And now it's a 2-year program where we give 75% funding to ventures in the first year, 70% in the second year. they use that funding to then go to the private market and raise the matching funding from private investors. It makes it a lot easier for a private investor to come on board in that under those conditions. And we've seen, most importantly, some amazing success stories. I won't eat up all your time on the panel, but I'm happy to tell more about that later. I think we have a lot of big challenges ahead, but I'll just say on terms of numbers, you gave the statistic about the overall close to 3% in high tech. We're extremely proud that in our startup program, 11% of our funding now goes to Arab entrepreneurs. So we're not at 20% yet, which is where we should be, at their part of the population, but it's way past, anything that you'll see in any other funding organization. And based on that, we expanded the program first to ultra-Orthodox Jewish entrepreneurs, and as of 2 months ago, to women, which, as ITZIK mentioned, is the topic for another panel at another time.
So actually, the next question to you is what are the challenges that you're facing now? You have new funding programs for Arabs, more and people coming in. What is the biggest challenge you're facing now? Is it money? Is it people that understand the problems? What is the biggest challenge?
I think the challenge for any entrepreneur is to grow their business and to make it succeed. So money is an absolutely necessary condition, but there are so many other things that are needed: business networks, mentors, role models. So we're looking more and more at the ecosystem around, and there are a lot of amazing organizations, whether private or government funded or not-for-profit, that are trying to fill in some of those gaps, but more is needed, and then more is needed at the growth stage as well. So the startup phase is great. We need to get a lot more people getting off the ground at the initial stages, but then growth capital is a big challenge. And I have to say, on a general note, government funding in Israel, just to give you a sense, is about 4% of the overall funding going into the venture industry. So, we're important, but the real change is going to come from the private sector, and that's who we hope to kind of invite to follow.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the R&D expenses in Israel is the highest among the OECD, but the governmental side there is actually the lowest one, right?
I don't think it's the lowest, but it's
lowest.
one of the lower ones.
Okay, ITZIK, can you please tell us about advantages you find in Arab companies that you don't find in Israeli companies?
First of all, there's no distinction between Arabs and Israelis.
Israeli Arabs and Jewish.
Yeah, it's a mistake I also sometimes make, and it shows what are some of the things we need to still correct. I cannot clearly say about advantages in Arab companies as opposed to general Israeli companies, because Israeli high-tech, I'm fascinated. I came from the Israeli high-tech, and I'm proud of it, and I'm proud to be part of it. So I cannot say that there are special advantages, but I can say about some differentiators that are very, very clear. For example, the level of education. The average level of education in our companies, we have 8 portfolio companies. By the way, going back to Naomi's right point, nearly all of them already raised additional funds from Samsung, from leading third parties in the market. I'm talking about beautiful companies. If I can say a very clear differentiator is the level of education. We have 8 companies. In them, we have 8 doctors and 4 professors. Now, it's not a medical company. None of them are medical. Usually, you see doctors and professors in these kind of biological life sciences. These are nanotech and AI and computer vision companies, but still the level of education is very high, and I can relate it to the level of confidence of many of the entrepreneurs. In Israel, the army gives many of the Jewish folks the confidence of how strong they are, how nearly omnipotent they are. Some of our overconfidence as Israelis originates, for the good and for the bad, originates from our army service, which showed us our limitations and how far they are beyond our belief. The Arabs don't go to the army. So it takes them sometimes many, many years just to understand that they're just as good as the guy next to them. So they graduate their first degree, they graduate their, what's it called? Not MBA, major, master's. When I once said second degree, said they're not charged with murder. So in Hebrew, we say second degree. Master's degree, thank you, YADIN. And only then they really understand how strong they are. So they come to us. This is one distinguishment. Another one is, it's a nightmare to be an entrepreneur anywhere on the planet. It's a trip it's a trip of a lifetime, but it's still a nightmare to be an entrepreneur. It's a double nightmare to be an Arab entrepreneur from the peripheries and to recruit people. We have to face the facts if we want to fix them. It's harder for an Arab CEO to recruit a good programmer, a Jewish programmer that goes into the room and has the same response when he goes into the room and somebody speaks to him with an Arab accent. It's harder for him to relate to him as his future boss than to relate to somebody who's an ex-8200 or an ex-Air Force pilot, hotshot, that will manage him. So if to talk about the positive side and about advantages, I think those entrepreneurs that are now the leaders of the company, and I use the word leaders, they deserve this title. They need to be super charismatic and strong, and I'm not talking charismatic in a kind of movie star, but in the integrity and the internal strength of these guys, that they can communicate it and relate it from a really a strong professional approach as well. So we're talking about entrepreneurs that will really make the change in Arabic society in Israel and the Israeli society in general. Jewish entrepreneurs have the privilege of seeing entrepreneurship as a natural thing. It's so common among us, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Arabs don't see it natural, so they grow out of a soil that is more of a rock soil than a fertilized soil.
Thank you. AMANI, you told me yesterday when we spoke that some of you, at least I think one day a week, am I wrong, that you mentor Arab entrepreneurs. Can you elaborate about that and tell us what you teach them?
For me, it took me a lot of time to be aware of the startup ecosystem and to learn a lot about it. And I didn't find anyone around me to support me to do that. And it's really hard for you as a founder of a company. You need to have people around you to motivate you to keep going. And I didn't find that in my environment. Even with all the things that I achieved before, most of my family, they thought that I'm an intern in a company because I quit my first job till now. So I wanted to share my experience with other people. So I said I need to spare a weekly time, like a day per week, every week, to other people to help them how to start their own businesses. And I helped more than 300 people till now, only in East Jerusalem. And I give lectures like to these people, even that I'm not, like I'm still in a seed stage startup, but I have because I've been doing that for a long time, I have a lot of experience now. So I can share it to them. For them, it's like a slap in the face because they don't know how to start their small businesses. At the same time, I'm telling them about a $19 billion exit, right next to the door. So I'm sharing this knowledge and I'm doing the awareness for them. So maybe they will be more people like me and more successful people in Jerusalem.
Okay. She deserves it. So Gideon, you're Druze and you live in the periphery. As ITZIK mentioned before, it's not easy. So now your neighbor comes to you and tells you, listen, I want to study medicine. What can make him think about being entrepreneur as a Druze in Galilee? How do you want to involve him in the ecosystem?
Okay, so in the Druze community, if you don't know anything about us other than that we have good food and pizza Druzit and we serve in the army, there's a lot of qualities that you don't know about us. And by the way, I'm a part of a team that is arranging a summit, high-tech summit in the Galilee in the end of the month. So you are more than welcome to come and meet us. If you ask the Jewish mom what do you want your son to be, she will tell 10 or 15 years ago, she will tell you she wants him to be a doctor.
Or a lawyer.
Yeah, today, make an exit, okay? So if you watch it from the evolutionary stage that we are in, we are like 10 or 15 years back then from where the Jewish mom was. And if you go to the Galilee or in the north, it's a desert. You have no ecosystem, no high-tech ecosystem at all. You have barely, you can see barely a few high-tech companies that open R&D centers. We want to change that. and there are a lot of initiatives in the recent months to make all of the north to connect it with the center and maybe make it. I don't know if you heard, but Ariel Margalit and Yuzma Leumit, they want to make the
North program.
the Golan a food tech empire. So I think it's a good goal that we can.
We can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think that what Dennis once said that the Jewish people, because they had to survive over the years, they had to excel in everything that they do. I think that we are in the north, Jewish, Arabs, Druze, different kinds, different genders, different colors, doesn't matter. We have to collaborate with each other, and maybe we have, a Zionist mission or a patriotic mission to make the north a food tech empire. So maybe that's our goal. And there's no problem with people going to study medicine. They can, study medicine and be an entrepreneur. I know a guy who was my friend who has a startup in this area. So we don't know all of the things about our bodies. There are a lot of diseases that we need to find cures to them. So.
Okay, so Peter was talking about collaboration, and YADIN, I think it's a must question. What do you think the potential in terms of collaboration between Israeli and Palestinian companies and entrepreneurs?
So the question is about collaboration. What's the potential for work between Israeli and Palestinian entrepreneurs? Look, I think that there's tremendous opportunity, and we're paying a huge opportunity cost by not doing what can be done to work together. And this is true on several levels. I mean, I think the dream, if you will, is to go from being a startup nation to being a startup region, okay? And that can involve, quite a few things. So first of all, today, given the political environment, it's very difficult to get Palestinian companies and Israeli companies to work together formally and openly. You do get Palestinian entrepreneurs. I've taken plenty of Palestinian entrepreneurs to meet with colleagues in Israel informally. It's great. Everybody gets along. They really speak a common language. There's kind of instant chemistry that you see, which is fantastic, and it just shows the potential. There's also today already a model of, not many examples of it, but a model of Israeli entrepreneurs working with R&D talent in the West Bank. Okay, so there's a company that OurCrowd is invested in also, as are we, called FRID, which is a Jerusalem company started by a very successful serial entrepreneur, Tzvi Schreiber. And he said, I want a good chunk of my R&D in Ramallah. And today he's got about 75 engineers working in Ramallah. And it's fantastic. And they're doing, leading edge technology stuff there. So that's another indication, another example of how companies can work together. But and another example is, you mentioned I started this Palestinian internship program, which Anna Gol, who runs it, happens to be sitting here, and we bring young Palestinian university graduates to come do internships at companies in Israel. And I want to make a pitch for any companies here or any people who are connected to companies here. We need more companies to host interns. And as I heard from somebody sitting in the audience, one of our host companies is here, told me what a fantastic experience this is, a company called Games for Pain. They have an intern now. ITZIK had too. Okay, so really across the board, it's been a fantastic experience, and it's an opportunity that these kids, these graduates don't have back in the West Bank. We think we're so used to all the multinational companies being here. There are 300 or so of all the leading multinationals in the world based here, employing Israelis. You know how many there are in the West Bank? 0, okay? So we need to find ways to connect these two. I believe also that there's potential for Palestinian companies to work with Israeli companies. And I'm working now to create something. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Naftali's here, who's very intimately involved, but there was something called the Bird Foundation that was incredibly important in the whole development of the startup nation here in Israel. And that program it was set up by the US and Israel governments 42 years ago, and they gave grants to joint ventures. Still giving, absolutely. To grants between, for a joint venture between an Israeli and a US company. I want to copy that model for the Palestinian tech ecosystem and give grants to joint ventures between a Palestinian startup or a Palestinian tech company on the one hand, and either a US or an Israeli company or both on the other. And this will provide a tremendous incentive for companies to work together, which is very difficult, as I say, to do today, and for US and Israeli companies to work with Palestinian companies. And this actually is something that's now, I want the funding for this to come from the US, perhaps also from the Gulf. And there is actually a bill that was sponsored by 4 senators, Republicans and Democrats, that's working its way through Congress now. And I'm hopeful that that this thing will get off the ground and it can make a tremendous impact. And I think by having this umbrella with US and perhaps Gulf backing, that will enable Palestinian and Israeli companies to work together, which, can make a tremendous difference on security, financial, political levels here for all of us in the region.
So you're saying that innovation can break borders, actually?
Absolutely. I mean, you see people working together and, just these interns, they come to work with an Israeli company. For the intern, it's the first time, for almost in every case, it's the first time they've either met somebody Jewish, somebody Israeli, other than maybe at a checkpoint. And for the Israelis working in the companies, it's the first time that they've met and had a chance to work with a Palestinian, other than perhaps a soldier. Other than perhaps a soldier, who encountered Palestinians at a checkpoint, or maybe people who, went by a construction site and saw a Palestinian working there. But to be working as, equals, okay, maybe one has more experience, one has less experience. They're an intern after all, but, they're a professional. And to have that kind of relationship, just makes a tremendous difference and really can break down borders. I'm not saying that, innovation or technology is going to solve all our problems. It's not going to bring peace to the Middle East. We need brave politicians on both sides to do that. But by showing that it's possible for Israelis and Palestinians to work together, to do something productive together, to build things together, I think that can be a great model also for the politicians. And it shows that, whenever people say there's no partner on the other side, well, here there are literally partners on the other side, and they want to build things, and they want to build things together. So hopefully that'll be a model that can help the politicians along.
That's truly inspiring. So I would like to ask...
Can I add a comment on that? Just taking off from Yadin's point, I mean, I think, and you asked earlier, what are the unique advantages of the Arab entrepreneurs? Let's not forget they have an amazing advantage in terms of the language that they know and the culture they belong to. And the Arab world is a huge market opportunity. Arabic is the 4th most spoken language worldwide. It's mostly markets that still have huge potential for growth in terms of digital content and services and innovative products and services. So, we have a gold mine here in our Arab community within Israel that can help be a bridge to those markets and to those opportunities if we know to support them and to support their growth in the right way. And I think another thing that was touched on earlier here is that there's been a massive game changer in terms of the shift that's already happened within Arab society. So until, what AMANI described about the reactions she gets about being an engineer, that has started to change, but that was very common. I think in Jerusalem, you're probably experiencing now what Arabs in Nazareth or Haifa would have said 5 or 10 years ago, that nobody went to study computer science or engineering. Nobody, those professions were basically closed, and therefore parents, discouraged their children from going to those areas. That's why we see so many Arab entrepreneurs in the medical and the biomedical fields, because they were, many of them, frustrated doctors who actually wanted to be engineers, but were sent to study medicine instead, and in a second round came back to bring innovation into those fields. But now we have a younger generation. We have more, it's an amazing statistic, we have more Arab students of engineering and computer science actively studying today than the entire number of graduates in the 20 years, from I think 85 until 95 to 2015. So there's been already a massive change, but what needs to happen now is for the industry to open up the doors to hire these people and to integrate them into companies. And I think, it's not all about entrepreneurship. Let's not forget that. A lot of people will grow as excellent engineers, developers in the technology industry. Some of them will start their own companies. That's great, but there's room for them in many, many places in the Israeli high tech.
By the way, can I add?
Yeah. Just shortly, because we're almost out of time.
Yeah, just adding to Naomi's point, if you want to understand where things are going to head to, and if you want to understand where the Arabs in Israel are coming from, we can look at the Jews in the diaspora. It's the experience that my grandfather had growing in Eastern Europe, and when I spoke to an American friend of mine and I told him, you do not understand what we're talking about in the US, he said, what are you talking about? My father was a huge talent in tech and he could not get a job in high tech, so he went to be a doctor. So we grew up in Israel. Lucky for us, we don't need to suffer those things, but our parents and grandparents did. So things will change. Same goes to the Arabs today. It will also change. This probably leads you to the next part.
So I would like to ask all of you the same question, starting with you, AMANI. In five years' time, what would success look like, and what do you think the audience can do in order to make it happen?
So you will, 5 years from now, you will have a panel of full Arab people in the panel, not just me.
It's a very good point, by the way. We spoke about it.
Yes, and for me personally, success will be having one of the leading companies in EdTech in MENA region, and most of the employees in this company will be ladies, like engineers. So this is the success for me.
And a tip for the audience: what do you think they should do in order to move things forward?
First of all, if you are an investor, I'm here. You can talk to me directly.
I will take 10% of your...
we can negotiate it. The second thing, you need to believe in us. Like, we are working really, really hard, and we want to have a better futures for ourselves and for our children. So you need to help us so we can all have a better world in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
So following AMANI's point, not only will they all be Arab, but 50% will be women too. So at least. So I think, yes, I mean, I really believe that we should see the makeup of our society in every field. So I want to see the tech workforce, equal distribution to the different parts of society. If Arabs are 20%, and in 5 years they may be even a little more than that, then they should be the same number in tech, the same number in entrepreneurship. And I think that when you ask, what everyone can do, really not to underestimate the importance of the personal and the individual step, the one investment, the one mentor, the one intern, in whatever field you're in. So I'm dealing with this as policy, but I'm also proud to have hired the first Arab employee at the Innovation Authority, which was kind of long overdue for a government agency. She's excellent. She was hired for her talents, but I went out and made an active, attempt to find Arab candidates and to show them that they were equally welcome. So I think that whatever field that you're in, whether you're in technology, investing, or another field altogether, think about what you can do to make our society more inclusive and equal.
Thank you.
If you went into a hospital 10 years ago and you met an Arab doctor, the racist among us would say, oh no, my God, he's not touching my family, and we still have those dirts in the Knesset. But if you went into even me and everybody else, say, oh, that's interesting, that's an anecdote, an Arab doctor. And today we see them all over the place, and they're managing major divisions in Rambam today, and they're brilliant doctors. just like the Jews and just like anybody else. And I think the same goes to high-tech. If you went into a pharmacy store in Israel and you saw an Arab pharmacist, you would say, oh my God, that's interesting. Now they're all over the place, which is great. Same goes to high-tech. I'm sure that 10 years from now, we'll have Arab professionals all over the place. We'll have Arab entrepreneurs participating in the Israeli high-tech just as the Jews and just as anybody else. It's a vector that is bubbling in the Arab society, and it will not be stopped. We just need, as Gideon rightfully said, we need 1 or 2 success stories, and we will have them, I can assure you that. And they will give the Arab mother the confidence to tell her son over dinner at Friday, and her daughter, I'm sorry, I stand corrected. I stand corrected, that's a good point, Naomi, thank you. But she will need to tell her children, guys, you're just as good as the son of the neighbor who just had an exit, so why don't you become an entrepreneur? Because whenever I moved the position in high-tech, my mother always told me, but why? You're so happy there. Why move, even if they doubled my salary? So this was the generation of my parents, and this is changing. And as to everybody else in the crowd, I think, first of all, that the vectors are headed in a very clear direction. It's a trend that we're in the middle of, and we will see its results in a few years from now. And I think that everybody needs to remember that same goes to everywhere in the world. Diversity generates much, much, much better results. Just look at the West Coast. 80% of the employees there are foreigners. Same goes to Israel. When you employ more women, when you employ minorities, everything turns much, much better.
Thank you.
So I think if you're asking about success in Palestine, West Bank, 5 years from now, I would very much hope that we will have seen the first Palestinian startup success story. Hopefully it'll be in our portfolio, but the main thing is that it be somewhere, and that's going to be a model for young Palestinians to become entrepreneurs, to consider the tech world, to stay and build the local economy instead of leaving, as many do, or instead of leaving their professions. And that will be incredibly important for all of us, because economic opportunity, development, jobs will reduce despair and increase stability for the benefit of all of us. So that's how I see the success over there. And I'd say I differ from ITZIK a little bit in the sense that it's not taken for granted that that's the vector and it's going to move in that direction. We need to help it move in that direction in the case of the West Bank. And everybody here, by definition, you're involved in tech or you're interested in tech. So first of all, you've already done the first step, I think, by coming here, which is becoming aware of the fact that there is Arab entrepreneurship, whether in Israel, whether in West Bank, Palestine. And now the question is, what can you do to help it along? And in the case of, some of these things have been mentioned, but in the case of what's going on next door, okay, with companies in Ramallah, there's a spectrum of activities. You can mentor somebody. You can go visit, with permission, of course. Go visit the tech scene in Ramallah or Rawabi. You can have some kind of partnership, commercial relationship between your company and a Palestinian company. You can invest in a Palestinian company. You can host a Palestinian intern. One day you can acquire a Palestinian company, hopefully. There's a tremendous, really, spectrum of things that can be done for the benefit of all of us here.
Thank you.
So I think that the main difference between, or let me put it in other words, the Jewish people, they had the experience of building a great nation, a great country. The Arabs, they don't have that experience yet, okay? So if you talk to your father, your mother, your grandfather, grandmother, they had the experience of failing and moving forward. We haven't had that experience yet. So yeah, I think that in the 10, 15 years we are going that way. We are learning a lot from you. So and I think that if you integrate minorities, you diversify, also Haredim, okay? Not just Arabs, all of the minorities, we will see that we have more common grounds and things that could connect us other than things that divide us. So this is, I think it's the greatest gift that we could get in the next 10 or 15 years. And regarding the Druze community, I would really like to get some help from you guys, all of you here, because you know there are a lot of initiatives in the Arab community in general, but in the Druze community we have none. And if you see, my tip for you today, it's go out there, see somebody, meet people who don't don't look like you, don't speak the same language. Meet them, get to know them, and you will see wonderful things come out from that. This is what I think.
Thank you. So unfortunately, we were out of time. So I would like to thank you all. It was really inspiring. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming.